Start game now.
Welcome, retro fans. This is the No Swear Gamer. Today with a special Gaiden or side story episode. Today we are going to basically respond to a request made by the Retro League podcast. On their latest episode, they said, hey, it would be cool to hear one of their episodes being played on a Sega CD system. So me and Soundwave hooked up and we made this handy dandy recording of the Retro League podcast from April 1st of this year. Cool thing is if you turn it upside down, it kind of says hi to you. And it's a palindrome, 4114. It's also their April Fool's episode. Very funny. I encourage you to check it out. We'll be looking at a little bit of it, popping it into a Model 2 Sega CD system as well as a Sega Saturn. On the same episode, they said that the Sega Saturn doesn't get as much love in the retro community as other systems, so I thought I'd show it some love. So join me as we play a little bit of the Retro League podcast in a Sega CD system as well as the Sega Saturn. The great Sega CD title screen, at least for the Model 2 version. You can see it says version 2.0 up there in the top right corner. Very iconic music to those of you who had the Model 2 Sega CD player. Here we are at the menu screen, and as you can see, it is fairly simple. You can play, stop, pause, skip ahead, skip chapters. We got the program menu here where you can shuffle. You can also program it to play certain tracks, but if I try to play a program that's not there, it politely kind of tells me you can't do that with a nice little beep. So let's go ahead and start this episode. And you'll notice as we're starting it, you got the nice kind of clean display there. We're going to skip ahead a little bit and enjoy the opening of the Retro League podcast.
Welcome one and all to the Retro League podcast. I am Jungle Rat Rob, and joining me is Hugh.
Squirtle.
This is going to be our episode for April 1st, 2014, and this week, back in gaming history, in 1998, Duke Nukem Forever was released for the PlayStation.
Yeah, the iconic sequel to
and
Duke
of course,
Nukem 3D.
Who wants to talk about Duke Nukem Forever? Perhaps you think it's a good game, but let's skip ahead and check out some other stuff. Notice too that on the side there it shows you the balance between the right and the left speakers,
right?
which
they didn't really,
of course for this episode is
in
perfectly
Super Mario 3,
balanced.
there were the Goombas. There were flying Goombas in there too, yeah. So you can see this was a very
the CD and G option was a very interesting thing back in the day. There was actually some CDs that allowed you to put it into a player such as the Sega CD, and while you played the songs, they had little graphics that came on screen. Kind of like a PowerPoint show, but this one, of course, that's not enabled, so all you get is the blank screen. So there you go, the Retro League on a Sega CD system.
I'm on World 3.2 at this point. You know, it does take a while to advance in the game. I didn't look up where the warp zones are, if they're in the same location, or if there's other tricks. I'm just going to try and play through it the hard way, really.
Now for the Sega Saturn, very nice intro. I think it's classic. You can see how they kind of tried to modernize the design, at least what was modern when it was brand new back in the late 90s. Trying to give it more of a spaceship feel, like the circular buttons, like the little cubes on the side. Those green cubes will kind of expand with the music, and you can see some of the options. We will explore some of these more at greater length as we continue on with the podcast. Okay, here I am messing around a little bit with the CD and G channel, the CD plus graphics. Really have no idea what I'm doing here. I was just kind of playing around. I'm sure someone more technical than me can tell me exactly what I was doing. But let's go ahead and let's look at how we can kind of change the display. One of the nice things is you can either display how far along you are in it or how far you are away from the end. And now this was kind of interesting. This was adjusting the surround, and it really kind of, it seems to me more like you're adjusting the reverb, like if you're in a hall or whatnot. So we'll continue to explore.
Hammer Brothers are
this is really fun, adjusting the vocals. This is very unique to the Saturn. I haven't seen this in other systems. You can actually change the pitch.
And, you know, none of this goofiness where like you stand next to the piranha plant.
Give them that higher helium kind of voice.
So, you know, you have to time your jumps over those really well. And the poison mushrooms really keep you on your toes, too. So,
and take it down lower.
3-2 at this point. You know, it does take a while to advance in the game.
A little too low there, but you kind of make it sound almost like one of those guys in the movie who call you up. You know, they kidnapped somebody and they're calling you, but they're disguising their voice.
Some of my game of the week from a couple weeks back, Hyper Area, but also a recent trade.
Although listeners of the Retrocast After Show
already know about this one, but I had a good trade with Mike T. So he sent me this game. YouTube viewers can see.
it says
Still got the Blockbuster sticker on it, but it's...
I'm not sure if I'll pronounce this right. Hagane?
You can also mute the vocals. When you mute the vocals, it is supposed to be kind of like a karaoke, but when I did it, at least with this episode of the podcast, it sounded more like you were covering up the speaker with a sock. You just kind of muffled it. But it was a neat idea. Again, these are some functions that I did not notice on other systems. And if you want, you can also remove the display and give yourself a nice kind of serene spaceship setting. You got the ship flying through space. So this is the Sega Saturn. You can see kind of how it evolved since the Sega CD. I kind of prefer it over the Sega CD, even though I was an original Sega CD owner, and the Sega CD was my first CD player. So there you go. If you want to play your CDs in something that's about the size of 1,000 iPod Nanos, why not try the Sega Saturn or Sega CD? And to check out the Retro League, just go to iTunes and search for The Retro League or surf the internet at theretroleague.com.